get rolling here. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Profit Success webinar, The Process for Success at Your Shop. I'm Patrick Egan, I'll be your moderator today. So in a few moments, we'll be joined by Kirk Linehan, the owner of Christian Brothers in Virginia Beach. Welcome, Kirk. And we'll also be joined by Todd Westerland, the CRO of Facepay. Welcome, Todd. And we're also here with Chris Cotier, owner of the Golden Rule Auto Care and the architect of AutoTextMe. We're going to be joined by Jimmy Turner, owner of Christian Brothers in Colorville, a little bit later today. And then Craig O'Neill, our training manager at AutoTextMe. But before we begin, let me take care of a few housekeeping details. I got to advance my slides here. The broadcast is brought to you by Facepay, the creator of the relational payments platform, and by AutoTextMe, the maker of workflow and communication solutions for the auto industry. Also, the webcast is intended to be interactive, so we'll try to address everyone's questions throughout the session. So use that chat button you see down below to ask your questions throughout the webinar. And we'll try and hit up your questions as we go along. If not, don't worry, we'll hit up your questions at the end by email. And we'll also have a Q&A session at the end as well. Also, we're going to record the entire session so that you can watch it again or share it with a friend or the rest of your team later on. And in fact, why don't we try out that chat button now? Go ahead and click on that chat button down there and let us know where you're at. I want to know what city you're in. Just say hi, just so we know that you know how to use that chat button. So I'll go ahead and hammer away at that thing there. Yeah, we've got people all over the country. We had just about 300 people sign up earlier today. We've got about 50 logging in here so far. All right. Okay, cool. So we're also going to be prompting you with polls as we go throughout the presentation, just to make sure we know where you're all at. And in fact, let me try a poll now. So what's your experience with the workflow process in your shop so far? You have a formal process already. You have an informal process, but you don't have a tool yet to manage it, or you're in the process of setting up a process and workflow, or you want to, or you never even considered it, and that's probably why you're here. So I think a lot of people have process already in place, at least some type of informal process, whether it's written down or you're using a shop tool at all. Okay, so looks like we got about 75% of people have voted already. Let's share the poll with everyone. All right, yeah, looks like 67% of the people who are here today said they have a formal process in place already at their shop. And that's great. And another 20% have an informal process, but don't really have a tool. And a lot of people are looking to set one up. That's great. Okay, cool. So, well, what are some of the reasons why you want to have a defined process? And this comes right from the Six Sigma book that's all about a defined, repeatable process. And this is kind of stuff that people have been doing in the software development industry for years. And it's important really in any business, because you really want to identify what tasks are important to your overall business goals. And it helps you do that just by defining your process. More importantly, it helps you improve the shop efficiency. So you can make sure that the things that are supposed to be done the same way every time are getting done that way. It also helps you streamline communications. So not only within your shop, so making sure that you have a communication process set up for how you talk between the front of the shop and the back of the shop, but also with customers. So how do you communicate with them at check-in? How do you communicate with them throughout the process of the vehicle being in the shop all day long? And it also helps you set up an approval process to ensure accountability and make sure that you're optimizing the use of all of your shop resources, whether it's human resources or bays or your time. And most importantly, it helps you prevent chaos from creeping into your day-to-day operations, which, yeah, it happens. But if you've got a process in place, you always have a fallback to make sure that you're always doing the same thing every time. Well, I think that's why we're here today. Lots more people in here. And to kick us off, I'm going to turn it over to Todd Westerland, the Chief Revenue Officer with Facepay. And Todd, if you're ready to go, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to stop sharing. And
you can keep it there right now. Okay. You don't have to. I have the same slide deck, so yours is better right now. Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect.
You know, kind of giving a quick little background of why we're here today and why this webinar is important. So back when I was a technician, I don't want to date myself, whatever it was, some, I don't know, 30 years ago. We in our shop, we didn't have a lot of processes written down, if you will. Everything was just, there's a lot of things you just kind of did. And I actually had to go on a road test. One of the things that would happen is a different tech would do the final road test after the vehicle was done. Kind of, we check each other's work. So I jumped in a 300, I think it's called 300Z. I'm trying to think, 1993, I want to say. One of those really low profile ones. And, I go shooting off right out of parking lot, take a right down the court there. I got about 2 buildings down and the right front tire just blew off. The front fender opened up like a Coke can. It just ripped right out and actually ripped the metal just right out. And that moment was the moment in our shop where you could no longer, the car could not be pulled out of the bay until somebody came over and gave it a double check of a torque wrench, set to specs around the vehicle. And then at that point, when the second signature was on, the vehicle could then leave the driveway there. Well, fast forward many years into the future, I'm sitting in the back of a brilliant man's shop, Mr. Chris Coultier there, and we're talking about auto flow and how just he's the one that figured this out with an amazing team. And Chris, for the life of me, I can't. I've been trying to think this last couple minutes. What is that part that you have? You're the first one that created it. I first saw it where the checkout of the vehicle to make sure the vehicle's okay before it could leave.
I appreciate it, Todd. I don't think it was the first one, but final quality control of the vehicle.
Final quality, you were
Yes.
Absolutely. I watch everything. I know you're the first one that put it out there. I saw it, absolutely brilliant. And if we had had that, Chris, that would not have happened in our shop. So you and the team have changed the industry by making sure those processes have happened and made it very easy. Now we fast forward up to the old Facepay before I hand it over to Craig there. And all our data comes back. Dr. Hale and Phil and Patrick, we're all looking at the data and we go, whoa, if they use auto text me, instantaneous savings to the shop, just instant. It's placed as the first payment option. And let me just tell you another way, Chris, that you just continue to sleep amazing at night. If a shop, I think I saw Frank on here, and I got to take my wife's Ranger over into the shop next week, which will be, as we all know, a lifetime process for me, but needs 4-wheel brakes. And I don't know exactly what the final bill is. Frank will definitely, give me an amazing fair price there and everything. But I know that the savings on that through Facepay should buy the shop lunch, just that one repair order, okay? And if you think about it in that way, every time that process happens, it's like free lunch to the shop forever. So I'm excited because, Chris, we're helping people text like food. You're also giving them Friday, free lunch through Facepay every single week. So absolutely amazing. So I'm gonna hand it over to I think Craig, right?
Yeah.
Craig, Chris, a little bit, and maybe give us a little in-depth to set the stage before we go over to Kirk and Jimmy there of how did you guys figure this process out?
Hey, before Craig starts, I want to do my intro because everybody else got like an intro. And sorry, Craig, I'm cutting you off, buddy.
Go ahead,
I'm
sir.
doing my intro because
work
I
for
am
you.
not getting cut out of this thing. First, Patrick, you're absolutely right. Shops, you said, are in chaos. I would say, can you control the chaos? Shops are always chaotic. Here's what I love about the industry and hate about the industry. And I've heard this good joke, right? The industry would be great without cars and people. Unfortunately, we need cars and people for the industry. We don't know when a car is going to break. I mean, you can schedule as best you can. You can do everything that you can, but we just don't know. So cars are going to break when they break. And that's the thing that customers have come to understand. And what we have to do is we have to serve our industry as best we can. And that means when we get that car in there, to get it out as quickly as possible, because we know that that customer is relying on that car to get their kids to school, to get to work, to get them to soccer practice. So workflow is very important, right? Because it's more about serving the person and getting them in and out. So that to me is the key, one of the keys of workflow. I appreciate your thing. Frank Skandura is also on this. So we actually did a good webinar on final quality control with Carm. It's probably been 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago. So there were other people doing final quality control. Todd, I love that you've given me the Godfather title, but I am the Godfather of nothing. I appreciate it. I stumble into accidental success like everybody else. I am shop owner. I have started Auto Text Me as a means to better just workflow and improvement. And then my last thing I'd want to say is I hope that Phil is enjoying the soccer of summer, what me and Phil would call football, as you US people would call soccer, but me and Phil would call it football. And I know he's enjoying the soccer as much as I am. So I just want to do that shout out because I know Phil's on the phone too, or on this webinar too. And he's probably like, yes, Chris is talking about soccer because that's one of the things we like to talk about. Now, that's my intro. From there, I will pass it over to Craig. Craig, the floor is yours, or the box is yours, I should say.
It's a box. Yeah, no. Hey guys, I appreciate the background too. And as we're talking about auto repair shops in particular in this venue, Todd, you hit on it. Chris, you touched on it too with the final quality control. And I think Kirk is probably nodding his head in agreement on a lot of it as well. And I thought it was interesting too, Todd, you talked about the process in terms of technical nature. And I think a lot of shop owners in particular with the technical backgrounds will do this too. We think about a process as we thought about a technical procedure. And I think that makes it a little easier for us to work on cars, but we don't translate that same procedure into how we do things as a business. And that's where the workflow piece really comes in. And we talked about this a lot in some of our own productions. And we asked a question, and we keep polling on this one ahead of it. And this is our most recent poll that you see on the screen, is the most challenging phase of the workflow. I mean, you can ask technicians working on a car what's the hardest part of a certain procedure. They'll probably have an answer. And you should think about this for your workflow as well. And you can see the answers here, and some of them do surprise me. In particular, I think it's kind of funny, especially for the context of this discussion around Facepay as well. The initiation and also making things ready for pickup, both for the lowest areas where people cite it as a challenge. And I thought about that for a while, and you guys might be thinking about it now too, is that accurate? Because I feel like a lot of challenges come at initiation and a lot of challenges come at picking up the visit. And if we don't think about the beginning and the end in mind, everything else between, it's kind of gonna be chaotic. So we're gonna begin with the end in mind. I'm going to just mention that right away. I think Kirk had a good example in his shop, because I peeked at it briefly, Kirk, before we started all this as a valued client. I do want to hear, in terms of the end of the ticket, how are you guys currently setting the stage of expectations for getting paid or making the payment or anything else with the client?
Yeah, so what we do is right from the time they walk in the door, we do two things. After creating the RO and getting all their information and what they're in for, we immediately send them a text to get approval for the work. Before they, as long as they have their phone with them, we want them to give us approval for everything they've told us they're at the counter. One, it ensures that we're communicating clearly with them as far as what they want us to do. They have a price at that point of what we're charging them for. And it also, I think one of the big keys is it initiates that contact via text. So we know they're getting our text, they know how to respond to our text, and there's an open communication line. And so they know and we tell them that's the primary way we're going to communicate with them is via text.
Brilliant.
Then we also tell them that we're going to follow that text up with a Facepay link, which is our preferred method of pay. So we want to get them signed up for that really before they ever come back in and we talk about money. So those are the two main things we do right from the start.
It's perfect, and that's what I thought is as I was looking at our slide here. This is the key step, and you're doing great. But a lot of shops, as you can imagine, they don't actually label any of those things that you described as a core part of their process. And gathering that information with the client to get the message to them, being step one. This is something you have to teach your teams how to do. I want anyone listening to this that isn't familiar with like a workflow process, just think for a moment about. Somebody new that you are training for a position in the shop, how you are going to communicate to them how your shop does things, because that forces you into that exercise of all the things you're going to have to show them. And assuming they haven't done the job before, they don't even know, like, check on the mobile number, check on the email, and then using the piece of communication like Kirk was describing to send them a message initially that engages them in the electronic tools that you do is such a fantastic way to really solidify that expectation, because now they've learned it, they've enacted it, and now you have a client who understands your process too. This is as much for your team as it is for the clients that you're serving. If your clients understand how this process is going to go and how to communicate with you, how to authorize work, how to pay you in the end, they're going to be less anxious throughout that whole visit. And so one of the key things that we talk on in Auto Text Me, we have the workflow. You see it at the top of this page. In this check-in step, this is the stuff that's going to get done. And you may have additional things that you want to do. You could have key tags and other things. And then you need to communicate with your technicians and who's going to do the next part of this process. And your client should probably know when that is going to begin as well. And this is the point where in Auto Text, we talk about a term, the RVH. You gather that reason for the vehicle being here. When you get that information documented and a technician's got it in a specific place, he needs to know where to look for that, and that's going to help him engage in the all-important next phase of the process, which is going to be the actual inspection. So many times I see shops trying to go digital. I see shops trying to do something that they've been doing an old way on paper. Going digital is a challenge for a lot of shops, and you've heard this before, and it's a bigger challenge for a lot of technicians because of all the changes that are involved in this. And if you don't have a clear company policy and process towards this step, if it's not written down, if they aren't sure what to do, if you aren't even sure what needs to be done, how and when, that's going to be a challenging first step after you've done the diligence of setting expectations for the client. Here, we just want to talk briefly about the things that we would want to see. Have you labeled what you want your technicians to do in a DVI? How many pictures are important? What a green, yellow, and red item is? Do your customers know what a green, yellow, or red item is on that checklist? Is that a severity thing? Is that something because it's yellow I can hold off on? Does red mean I need to do it right now? I'm going to die if I don't. Some of these things need to be explained and elaborated, and your crew members also have to have those definitions. That comes from you, the owner. If you don't define it for them, they're going to make their own definitions, and you'll see a variety of, well, you'll see some people stray on that. And I don't know, Chris and Kirk, you can probably say when you're training technicians in your shops on a digital inspection part of the process, if you don't tell them the difference between a yellow and red item, do you see a wide variety of outcomes?
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, it's pretty clear in our shop when to put green, red, or yellow on our thing. So we're pretty streamlined on that. So we really haven't had any. Once initially moving into Auto Text Me, we had some old techs that kind of grumbled and complained about it. But as we've kind of moved forward and moved people around, it's a very smooth process. New techs come in and they slip right into the slipstream, and they're ready to go within really an hour or two.
Nice. Yeah, it's all defined. Chris, I think you're muted.
So I have had the experience and you're absolutely right. Things can be all over the place, and they typically are all over the place. One of the things that we like to make sure that happens is that our service advisors who are dealing with the customers typically look at the sheet and they make sure. And a lot of times there'll be some talk back and forth between the service advisor and the technician to validate whether that should be red or whether that should be a orange item, right? Or what the severity is, because we really want to prepare our service advisors, right, to be able to have that conversation. So there is, a lot of times it's left up, like you said, to the discretion of the technician, which may may not have the same insight as the service advisor. So
Yeah.
one of our policies in our shop is to make sure that service advisor looks over it and make sure he understands or she understands all the issues on there before it does go out, so they can talk, intelligently about what's happening
Right.
with their vehicle.
Yeah, and when service advisors have gotten to that point, that's great. And what we're technicians, I've noticed, and because I bring this up because I was just working with a shop that had this issue. When we looked at the DVI reporting, a whole bunch of yellow items were in, and hardly anything red. Lots of yellow, lots of green on each vehicle. In this industry, is there a stigma that we have to overcome on a regular basis? And I feel that yes, there is. Rhetorical question. People feel like the auto mechanic is going to sell them things they don't need, and I feel like technicians in particular have come up with that really a kind of an oppressive stigma in this. If you're an honest technician, which most everyone that I've met is, they feel like they have to compensate for that, and they don't want to call something bad. They don't want to call it red. It seems so severe. Like, let's just call it yellow. And it's odd because you're going to be dealing with some of the anxiety of individuals in your shops on this, and it's an important piece of the process. If you help define it for them, it takes some of that stress away from the individual to have to be responsible for what that term means. And they need to have the confidence, like Chris is talking to, that service advisors going to be reviewing all this stuff. They need to know how that service advisor is going to be using this to present it to the client. And that's where this part of the process tends to have a lot of challenge. If the technician doesn't get the understanding that this is going to be presented to the customer in a way that presents the true health of the vehicle so that they can make an informed buying decision, well, then it feels like a sales gimmick that we're being asked to put together for that guy who's just going to try to sell a bunch of things, and he might communicate it wrong, or maybe I don't trust that service advisor to do it quite right. So nailing down that estimating process and letting your technicians know this is how it's done, it should demystify that even internally, and hopefully your clients will get that same communication piece as well. When you build inspection results from that digital inspection, generally speaking, you're gonna have the images and other evidence to back it up. You're gonna eradicate some of that pressure of trying to prove your legitimacy of those recommendations. It's one of those pieces that brings in chaos to our businesses. That happens because of the fact that the industry itself had struggled under a stigma. Too many times service advisors are trying to, this is a relational business. Facepay recognized that here in Auto Text Me, and I know Christian Brothers and Kirk's store absolutely recognize this is a relationship-based business. Having a process that actually brings out the responsibility that we feel for an individual's vehicle, that it becomes safe, reliable, and efficient. All of these things work together to communicate that. Now, now Chris hit on this, the authorization phase of any process, and Kirk even hit on it already too. This can be done electronically in so many ways. In Auto Text Me, we frequently will talk about texting the customer to let them know we're ready when the estimate's completed. We've already shared the inspection results. It's so important, folks, to share the inspection results. Little asterisks on that. And Kirk, I'm sure you've talked with your service advisors on this piece too. Send the inspection results. If you don't do that, and then all of a sudden you want to talk about the estimate and they haven't even looked at their inspection results yet, they have no context of which you're discussing anything with. There's whole webinars on that topic. We won't even
just
start.
To add to that, Craig,
Yeah.
what we do is, Auto Text Me makes it easy because you can see when they've checked the inspection results and what they've looked at and how long they've been on whatever they've looked at. So we wait to see that they've opened that up, and then we send them the estimate and make contact with them about what they want repaired. So they've already seen what's wrong with their vehicle before we're sending them a dollar figure.
It's so important. And I see a lot of times service advisors can read this. We could get into the weeds on this, but electronic authorizations aren't meant to take the place of a conversation with a client. There's a relational form of business, and you'll see that. And I feel like when we start talking about contactless things, even payment, a lot of people will start prejudging those things as being somehow more detached from that relational component. And what we're actually doing is sharing information and making things simple in a means that people are used to dealing with. You can pick up your phone and see the results. You can pick up your phone and pay. All that stuff correlates to a more positive experience. It shouldn't feel like we're creating distance from each other. you do the electronic authorizations without a conversation, chances are people are going to have questions that they don't even feel comfortable asking. And it's so much nicer when you text them, open it up, start the call, have that conversation about the data you shared. Parts and staging is unique because I always feel like this is a part of the process that people just completely melt on. This is, I've seen every service management system does it a little different. Every shop has a different intake process. Having a status for this and having a clear, defined, responsible party for managing the parts that are coming in or going out or getting put in a car or putting in a bin by a technician, man, some next level shops out there. I think you could talk to 15 shops and get 15 different opinions on how this should be done. But the diligent shops are going to document it. It doesn't matter who's responsible for what, as long as you document it and assign a responsible party. Chris, you taught us too, even in the Auto Text Me team, if you don't assign it to, if you assign something to multiple people, nobody will take ownership of it. Make it specific. Say, this is part of your job to manage this. Do it this way. Simply stated. Sounds simple. I know parts are not fun, but no, hey, parts vendors out there too. We have a few partners out there, and boy, there's some great things to be said for what the future holds for coordinating on statuses on that. And then we have this status. I call it waiting for technician. A lot of shops will ask, and Kirk, you might have this question too in your shop. Occasionally, you'll have technicians want to know, hey, when can I get started on the final authorizations that occur? Because you have the initial approvals and you have subsequent ones. I use this status for that, and I always talk about using statuses to communicate. Teach the technicians to look at that, and when the next priority vehicle says waiting for tech, they should know that, hey, everything's authorized. It's not waiting for parts. They're here. When it goes in here, you take it and move on and move forward.
Yeah, that's correct. We do the same thing. We still do a lot of verbal communication with techs, letting them know when parts arrived, just because we can't always trust that they're looking at their screens. But the screen is always first, and then we follow that up with immediate communication of when their parts have arrived, or when they're, when the parts have actually been ordered, and when they can expect them, so that they can manage their bays better and get cars in and out.
Yeah, and I always felt in my shop too, coming from a transmission background, the worst thing that we had was a technician coming to the counter, standing there while I'm talking on the phone to two different lines, people trying to communicate things, asking me if it's okay to get started on this next car or not. But they're just standing there waiting.
Wasting time.
Oh, it killed me. That my heart rate would go up, my eyes starts twitching. I'm not paying attention to the conversation I'm having with the customer anymore, because there's this pressure of this technician, and they don't have attitudes when they're waiting. Oh yes, they do. This solved a lot of that for us. Just simply changing the status into something like this communicated enough. And if all the parts were logged, and Auto Text Me, we do some things too. There's a little list you can show if it's ordered or arrived. They can reference that, and if it wasn't in this waiting on tech status, it might still be in requires parts. You can indicate it with a timer, which vendor we're waiting for and how long. You don't need to come stand there at the window asking me any of those things. Right there in your face. And I do teach technicians, after they get to a stopping point in a job, check that screen for that next priority. It's a dynamic screen. That becomes a part of the standard operating procedure that we need them to be assimilated to. I feel like the shops that have like one workstation or are sharing tablets have a harder time with this. This is the key thing. Like, I don't like chimes, bells, and whistles, but a lot of shops will ask this, like, hey, do you have anything to beep at my text when priority changes or anything else? It's like, right, well, you do. And Chris, we get this question quite a bit on technician notifications. How to let them know anything it can be a challenge. But what I know about technicians from being one, something beeps, vibrates, whistles at me during the day when I'm got my arms above the bell housing of a transmission, the likelihood of me stopping what I'm doing to go and check to see what the service advisor just beeped at me is nil. I'm not going to look at that thing until I'm ready. My hands are dirty anyways at that point. So I build that into a routine. It's like anything else. From there, we're in the servicing. Yeah, go ahead, Kirk.
You mentioned, you asked 15 shops, and you get 15 different answers. I think you probably get 16, maybe 20. But Jimmy Turner's here too. And
Hey,
hey,
Jimmy.
Jimmy, I'd love to hear a little bit about the process in your shop, especially at check-in. Do you have, what's your process for getting people checked in and getting them in the door?
Well, it's very similar to Kirk's. We have that the Facepay on the front end. We do all of the questions that he was talking about, gathering information. I would like to say that we send that request for authorization every time initially, but we don't do that. And consequently, we have suffered recently for that because of some miscommunication with customers. The great thing that I'm hearing, from you guys is that the system y'all have designed, if we use it the way it's designed, it eliminates so much stress and miscommunication. And I'm certainly a fan and love the system, but I have to remind myself and the others that use it that we need to use it the way that it's designed for it to be the most effective. So
Absolutely. No, reducing that stress is key. I'm going to just blast through these so we can get straight to further back and forth on this too. Only because we mentioned the QC process, we hit that. Technicians and service advisors need to know when that goes, and we get to that ready completion part of the process. And this is it, right? Those final statuses, the way we work that and everything in between, it's really just needs to be defined. Jimmy, you'd mentioned a couple things. I'd be curious with how Todd mentioned on the QC side of things. Do you guys have anything in place right now on that?
well, I was just looking at that. We have a shuttle driver and a couple of other people that are doing, I guess, a QC check after the technician brings the key up front, just to double check, because we want to make sure that when that car leaves, it's fully, repaired and everything's buttoned back up the way that it should. So we have an area where the keys are brought, and then a different person from the guy who worked on the car just goes out and double checks before that car's released.
Nice.
So,
Nice. Have you documented that process? Go ahead, Todd.
I thought it was pretty interesting that one of the challenges, of course, you guys have just created and fixed a major issue in the shop as far as process goes. But of course, we have the yellow red. Somebody's got to figure out a way to go, well, I believe that's yellow. I believe that's a red. And I think back, our version of that was, we were in Northern California. It would literally say, well, would you put your family in this and drive them to Disneyland right now? That's the difference between yellow and red. And the funny thing was, I remember the service writer was really getting on me about something. And, the red part of it, I just said, first off, this is Dodge Caravan. I'm not putting my family in that anyways to drive down there. So,
Well, what model year was it?
You want my view to be different, you're going to have a different vehicle as far as putting my family in there. So you remember those 1991 Dodge Caravans? I mean, that
Too well.
transverse engine. Yeah. How many transmissions were we doing? And
hey, the best Christmas we ever had, there was one on every hoist in the shop.
Yeah.
Cadillac and minivans.
Exactly. That's awesome. How I'd love to hear Kirk and Jimmy just maybe a little bit of how the Facepay process has gone. I'd love to just kind of hear good, bad, the whole of it. I'm a big honesty guy.
Yeah, it's worked well for us. We keep kind of sharpening the edge of the sword to kind of make it better in terms of our communication. The biggest obstacle we have is with people that have a tendency to be older and they're maybe not digital natives anyhow. and they're just a little skeptical of trying to do something not face to face. But other than that, anybody less than probably 40 doesn't really have any problem with it. They don't always want to use it. They want to use a credit card instead, or they're trying to use a credit card through Facepay rather than just hooking it up for their account. But for the most part, for those people who understand it and get it, it's been very effective. We've saved lots of money using it. And like I say, we just need to get better at communicating with people, how safe it is, why we're using it, and just kind of continue to refine the language that we're using. But we're very happy with it.
We just started, I guess, about 2 weeks ago. So we're still getting used to it. You know, what I've recommended to my service advisors is, you know, for those that are using debit or a cash, or a check or whatever, Facepay is the better alternative for us. If they're going to use a credit card, you know, there are probably reasons why they're using that, and so we don't try to get them away from that necessarily. But it's us just getting used to it and learning how to communicate with our customers the best way for us to request that they use that. And it's working so far. 2 of my service advisors have used it. The other one hasn't yet, but in the next day or so, I'm sure he will, and we'll figure out how easy it is to do.
Awesome. You know,
Hey, thanks,
it's interesting on process. We're talking process. You know, I sometimes I forget this. My dad actually owned a gas station for only like 3 months. It was kind of a weird thing, but we had a mobile gas station. I was about 8 years old, so I don't know. It was like 10 years ago. So, but he had 20. I don't know. Maybe it was like 40 something. But anyways, and I think back to that time, it's crazy because somebody would walk in, maybe they'd do brakes on the car, just hand my dad a couple $100 cash, right? And even then, it was a small town in Northern California, no Lafayette by chance. And everybody knew each other, so you could just write a check too, a personal check, you know? And you could even look at my dad and say, could you cash us on Friday? I get paid? Absolutely, no problem. Now let's fast forward, and I continually hear the same thing over and over in the process, which is we don't want to have a cash drawer. I mean, I don't want to have like 10 grand cash laying around. Absolutely not. I don't really want them bringing that in. Oh, what about checks? No, it's my biggest thing of fraud, of people canceling. And I got to chase them, go to small claims court, and I'm fighting for my money because they wrote a check. So we as a culture have changed our process to make sure that every dollar we earn has 3% coming off it going to the processor. And so when we look at the Facepay element just kind of being injected in there, it's bringing back that virtual cash. And I always kind of say, hey, you can give it to the processor. That's up to you. If you want to give them just, how about we just give them, they could save it all till the end of the year. I think that'd make a big impact and get a lot of folks waking up to getting Facepay in place. What if you just had to write the whole check to them at the end of the year? Here you go. Here's a $22,000 check to my credit card processor. How is that going to feel? Just because they nickel and dime you, maybe it's not as much on the radar, but write that big check. Okay, now, what if we did a little bit different and we said, okay, now Facepay is going to write you a $10,000 check at the end of the year. Let's just say you're $20,000, $24,000 in fees, and 14 goes to them, 10 goes to you. You can do whatever you want. You can give it to them, give it to your employees. You could buy them lunch every week. You could go on vacation. You could donate it, give it to church, help the needy. There's so much you could do with that yourself, your choice. And so my narrative I keep pushing is just grab your chunk and you just make your choice on what to do with it. Okay. And for me, the weirdest statement I ever had is somebody said, well, my credit card processors, they throw really great barbecues. And I thought, And what are they cooking? 'Cause I want to come to that because this is like a 10 grand rack of ribs, man. So it's got to be really good. So yeah, crazy, crazy, crazy.
Todd, it's interesting because a lot of the business, I'm up here in northern Michigan right now, and some of the little places you can eat and whatnot, they'll charge you a 3% convenience charge for using a credit card. I don't have cash on me, but I look at that and I'm actually bothered by the fact that that's on the bill. Now, if they had just raised their prices to a point where that 3% was absorbed there, I probably would have thought about it less as a client. But they had 3% convenience charge or cash. There was no other option. And of course, had this in mind because we're going to be doing this today. And I was thinking, you know what? These people need to know about this. I would use it right now as a client instead of the 3%. I would love to have the option of still protecting that business's earnings. I want them to be successful. I don't, having paid merchant fees myself over years, wouldn't want that. But the option wasn't even there. And I love that Jimmy and Kirk here especially are actually giving that option right up front. It's a part of their process. It's beautiful.
Yeah, when I moved to Las Vegas, I used a moving service and Pete's Moving Company, and I actually swung by to meet with Pete and I actually wanted to look at his operation, something probably some wouldn't do, but I'm one of those guys that's going all my family belongings and my daughter's dressers getting transported. I want to make sure it all gets there. So Pete was a great owner, and I went to put my deposit in with him, and he said, actually I didn't have an option. He just said there's 3.9% added to the bill, and it was right there. And I looked at it and I said, hey, I go, how many people look at that and you feel you lose business because of that? 'Cause I don't like it. I mean, I'm gonna do it, not being,
I like it.
I need your help, Pete, and I was kind of on the line there. And he said 1 in 10 customers he feels he loses them due to the 3.9. So I'm thinking, well, you just told me it's 10% of your business. You're actually losing. He actually acknowledged, he knows he's losing 10% because of that 3.9%. And I kind of took a breath. I had so much stuff to do. It's not easy moving state to state. Very thankful I can see Frank on the screen. He introduced me to amazing real estate agent and everybody. So I'm so grateful. Still a huge amount of stress. And I looked at him and I said, what if there was another way? And he goes, I don't know. What do you mean? And I go, what if? And I just went into the Facepay. And so I have a demo with him tomorrow morning. We'll see how it goes. Would you offer that as an option? I mean, I had to pay 3.9%. That's a lot. I don't like that. And some shops
I know
are
there's
doing
shops
it.
doing it out there. I know there are.
There is. I don't. To each their own. I don't know personally if I would feel comfortable with that. I think that it's. I can't push too hard because every shop is different. In some shops, I had a shop call me from a very small town in West Virginia, and he just said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I just saved $37. I'm really, really thankful. My family's thankful for Facepay and everything." And it was such a weird conversation because in my mind, I'm thinking, 37, okay. Talk for a minute, kind of got off the phone. And I thought, I really get a call over $37. Like, not everywhere has the same repair orders that are consistently going over $1,000, and anything saved in this tough times is huge. I mean, that's a great place to be. A kind of final thought I was thinking of, if you do a little research, February, Visa, MasterCard increasing the rates. They're all going up. This is the time to get in there and really start getting as many people as you can over on Facepay and just move over to flat fee subscription instead of an ever increasing percentage. They're going to take more. They're taking more of the whole industry's money coming February. It's publicized. They were so gracious this last February. They said, hey guys, we're going to give you guys another year before we increase the rates. Oh, thank you so much. And it's pretty substantial. I'm going to say it's like a fraction of a 0.5% or something. They're going to get it again. So Yeah. Uh,
Hey Todd, I noticed that Phil's here, Phil Jackson, our director of customer success. And Phil, a lot of the process, the success of your process is in how you talk to your customers too. And Todd talking about how to get people to actually want to use Facepay. Phil, do you got any best practices on how at the counter, the best idea on how to get customers on board with the idea of an alternative to credit cards?
So yeah, good morning everybody, or good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. So Kirk and Jimmy, thanks for joining us. You guys both kind of hit the nail on the head with regards to me. I feel it's set an expectation, and that's why I draw comparisons to the auto text me system, the way it communicates. So set an expectation that one, for auto text me, this is how we're going to be communicating, right? So your communication is done text messaging, they're expecting a text message. It's the same with us, right? And Kirk said it there. We're going to be sending you this one text to kind of check you in. And then we're going to be also sending you this other text that asks you to sign up for our preferred method of payment. So you get that expectation and you get that that communication with the customer that they are now engaged. They are now expecting to receive this message. They are going to read it. The numbers from auto text me speak for themselves with regards to, hey, we ask everybody, do we get everybody signed up? By no means do we get everybody signed up, but it's a very, in my opinion, text message is a very non-invasive way to ask. If you give them just that human aspect that, hey, we're going to be texting you this link with our preferred method of payment called Facepay, that also increases the chances of them going through and signing up. Again, we don't expect everybody to sign up and go through and pay from Facepay, because Jimmy touched on it. Some people are paying with credit card for obvious reasons. Some people need to pay with credit card, and that's okay. What we are doing though is asking every customer, set an expectation that one, we're going to be communicating with you through this way. Two, we're going to be sending you a link, so they know that link is safe. They know that link is good, because Kirk and Jimmy have a great relationship, and their front service staff have a great relationship with these customers, and you've built that trust over the years. So you set an expectation from a human aspect as well as an electronical aspect is, to me, the biggest key to making this work. So I've seen a lot of systems. We deal with a lot of systems, as you can imagine. A lot of them work well. Auto text me, the way it communicates, and that general process on check-in, and we have a pickup link that goes out as well that is very easy to incorporate, is just really, really helpful to us, and really, really, we've had some great success with a lot of our stores in this auto text me region, Christian Brothers included, and Jimmy and Kurt. Thanks again for joining us. That's my little point there. So thanks for linking me in, Patrick.
Oh, thanks, Phil. Hey, we do have a few questions, and we got about 5 or 6 minutes left. And I'm curious. Some people are asking your experience with the process, both Jimmy and Kirk. So Kirk, how long have you been using auto text me, and how long have you had a process in place, and how, what was the process of getting that set up in the first place?
For auto text me or for Facepay?
Auto text me.
So we've been using auto text me, I think probably since late 2018, maybe middle of 2018. And there was a process of transferring over from doing everything on paper to doing digital. That took us a few months to work through with different texts, but once we got kind of over that hurdle, nobody even has it. We're pretty much paperless now. We still print stuff or in the office, kind of track where keys are and things like that. But as far as the customer goes and as far as the texts go, we're completely paperless, going back and forth with them, and everything runs very smoothly now. So
that's great.
It's been a very smooth process.
Yeah, when you do ask for payment, I know you up front you tell people to sign up for your payment system, which is Facepay. How does it work on the back end? So when they come in for to pick up the car, do you send them a text ahead of time telling them go ahead and pay here, or how does that all work?
Yeah, so on the back end, when the car is done, we send them a text that lets them know that the vehicle is done, and then we just send them a link to pay via Facepay. Then if there's any questions on that, they'll call us if they can't get it to work, or if they think they've paid or whatever, then they will handle the one-off cases as they come up. But for the most part, we just send them a Facepay link. Sometimes people don't use it. They come in, still pay with a credit card. That's fine, or cash or whatever. But before they ever come into the store, when we tell them the car is done, we follow that up with a link that they can pay using Facepay.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Jimmy, do you do any type of text to pay at the end of the process?
Yeah, so there are a couple of options that you can use on the dashboard. There's one, it's basically to check out, where we're a little more in control, I think, of that transaction. I like to actually send them a text to pay from the Facepay dashboard. I like to send it with the amount that they need to pay and RO number or whatever. I'm a little more comfortable doing it that way than the actual being able for us to initiate that transaction out of their bank account. I want them to be in control, and that way, if they are the ones that do the approval or the authorization of the payment, then there can be no question, later on if we took something that wasn't accurate. So, but it's and it's worked flawlessly for us. Like I said, we haven't been using it that long, but we love it. We get our money within at the most 2 days. All the transactions are individually entered into our QuickBooks, and I like that as well. It does, obviously there are more transactions, but we know exactly what was paid. It goes into the bank as an individual transaction, and it comes into QuickBooks. So we don't have any issues with tracking information or whatever. It's a great system.
No, it's great. And does it make it easy? I mean, to just have like a checkout button at the end where you just say, I'm assuming you've got it integrated with Auto Text Me Now, where you just say checkout and it sends that text message to them, or are you saying you're doing it through the Facepay dashboard also?
Well, we do send them a notification and make sure they have signed up with Facepay if that's what they're going to be using. But once the transaction is, we're getting ready for payment, we use the Facepay dashboard and go through that text to pay through that dashboard, not through Auto Text Me.
Got it. So yeah, question for both of you guys. How have your customers received the idea of text to pay? Are they liking the idea? And then Facepay in general, in specific?
We've been using text to pay for at least a year and a half or so through AutoFlow with our current processor. So a lot of people are comfortable with that already, but the Facepay is just one more option they have. We already had the remote payment because of COVID. I think that was done more often than we had before. And then, but now with this system, most of them are just used to it, and they accept it no problem.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like I say, the biggest problem we have with people being suspicious or skeptical is just older people that aren't necessarily digital natives, but anybody else gets it. If anybody has to come in after hours to pick up, we will only allow them to use Facepay to pay their bill. Because we've had issues before where they've used a credit card. We in certain cases will allow them to use our credit card link to pay remotely, but if they want to give us a credit card over the phone, we just don't even do that anymore. We've had situations where people have, given us a credit card over the phone. We've taken that information, paid the bill, and then 2 months later, we're getting notified by the credit card company that they're challenging the charges, that they never entered them in. And so we just said, if you have to pick up after hours, we have to know that your payment is good. So we have them do we heavily almost mandate that they use Facepay to do that, except for very rare situations, just to solve that problem.
Oh, that's great. That's a great idea. Especially for
As I
after
say, there's a great point. Somebody, was that Jimmy who was saying about the individual charges, or that Kirk, how they're coming through directly. And the reason that is we don't make money off the transfer of your money. So the reason why the processors bulk it all together, they batch it, make this neat name. We batch all of them. Then they can hold that batch, make interest off of your money, and then release it to you. And sometimes they're so gracious to hold your money for like 3 days. I'm like, oh, that's great. It's impossible for us to do that. It's totally different. There's no way. So it has to be, a same day release to you guys. But just as a little fact.
That's awesome. Well, we've come to the end of our hour, and I'd like to thank you guys. Thanks, Todd. Thanks you guys for joining us all today. Thanks, Chris and Craig and Kirk and Jimmy.
So thank you guys, and look forward to continuing to work with you guys. And it's going to be a great year. Great finish to the year.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Awesome.
And look forward to seeing our next webinar. All right. See you later, everyone.